One of the favorite things about running a podcast is the great people you can meet. I consider the folks from the Irreverent Skeptics podcast to be friends. I've talked briefly to Ross from Skeptically Challenged and Bobby from No Religion Required. I've been in studio with Richard Carrier and talked on Skype with Michael Sherlock and Randy Tyson. I'm not just name dropping. I'm incredibly thrilled to meet and talk to all of these people. They're great people and great critical thinkers. In the first episode of this year, I was very happy to meet yet another great person. Armin Navabi of the Atheist Republic group and Facebook page. Atheist author and ex-Muslim, he Skyped in with Mike, Lana, Renee, and me for a great talk about his new book, some new projects for the Atheist Republic, and criticizing Islam. This is episode 24, recorded on January 9th, 2015.
We can say definitively that religions are all bullshit.
Amen, brother.
Well, you know me, I don't buy into BS.
I get paid to sign.
I don't fit into human nature.
Do not come here, not some area here.
What the hell was my point?
Welcome to Brainstorm, the home of hardcore skepticism. Woo-free since 2013. These skeptical atheists started a podcast to help spread critical thinking, skepticism, and some philosophic and scientific literacy. Host Corey is joined by Lana, Destin, Brad, Mike, Rennie, and Dave as they discuss news, politics, science, philosophy, and religion in a fun and intelligent way. And now it's time to open your mind to the Brainstorm.
Okay, so I guess welcome to Brainstorm.
Thank you for having me.
I'm Corey. Over where you can't see him is Mike, and there's Lana.
Hi.
And Renee will be in soon enough. So I guess we wanted to talk to you about, your new book and your group, the Atheist Republic, and here's Renee.
He's listened to your book on, I don't remember what that's called now.
Audible.
Like 3 times.
Yeah, I listened to it like 3 times.
Oh, wow. How was it? How do you like it?
Oh, I like it quite a bit, actually.
Yeah. It's pretty basic. It's meant to be an introductory book. It's not for... It provides resources for people that are interested in get a bit more detail.
Right.
Actually, the resources are offered in the text, in the ebook, in the Kindle version, and in the print version, because you can't just in the audio version it wouldn't make sense to just keep on mentioning all the footnotes.
Right,
but it's meant to be for people mostly that are interested in getting a basic understanding of why some people might not believe in God, or for people that are already atheists that are interested in to see how they could argue their position better. But for many atheists that are familiar with these topics already, I think that book might be a little bit too basic. But it was designed to be basic.
Well, it's nice. I thought it refuted the points of theists quite clearly. I mean, it's not as if these subjects require a lot of nuance, really.
Actually, that's a very good point, because a lot of times some people try to pretend like it is more complicated than I think it actually is.
Yeah.
It's very simple, and if you look at all the arguments, it always comes down to basically where's the evidence, and that's all that there is basically to it. And every time you basically evaluate each one of the theistic arguments, you always end up in well, where's the evidence? And that's all you need to know for being an atheist, that you can't just believe something without evidence. That's all you need. You don't need to have a philosophy degree. You don't need to know. You don't need to have a background in science or logical. Know the logical fallacies. All you need to understand is that believing in something without evidence doesn't really make sense, and that's all somebody needs to know before being an atheist. And that's the reason why, because some people think, like, if you don't understand evolution, if you don't understand the Big Bang Theory, then you can't really, those are the tools you need to become an atheist. But then if you look at the history of this debate, even before we understood evolution or anything about where the universe came from, we had so many great thinkers that were atheists, and they didn't have any explanation for most of the things that we do have explanation for. All they were saying is that your story of where the universe came from, where did you get that story from? That's all they were demanding. Like, you're just like these stories that people are coming up with an explanation. It just came out of nowhere. They didn't have their own explanations for where the universe came from. They were just demanding any kind of some sort of support for all these fairy tales. And if people back then could be atheists, I don't think anybody. I mean, without any understanding of evolution or Big Bang Theory or anything like that, needs to be worried about not knowing these concepts before being.
Yeah, for sure. All you really need is the question, how do you know that?
Yeah. How do you know that? That's all you need to ask. How do you know that? And you don't need to answer that also. As an atheist, if somebody says, well, how do you know there is no God? You don't need to explain that. You don't say, I'm not saying there's no God. I'm just saying, like, I'm not going to believe what you're claiming until there's evidence. I'm not making a claim. Why would I need to explain something when I'm not making a claim? You're making a claim. You need to explain how do you know something.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah, like you say.
Even though it comes down to just that, the reason why in this book we break it down to 20 different arguments. The 20 different arguments that theists usually bring up. These are the most common arguments that theists usually bring up when they're making a argument for why there is a God. It helps to see how to approach each one of them specifically to show why. Because sometimes when you tell people, well, you didn't give me any proof or evidence, they say, well, I just did, and they don't understand why what they just said cannot be considered evidence or proof. So that's why sometimes it helps to actually go through the argument. To actually, for example, some people say, well, there's so many people believing in God. How could there not be a God if there's so many people believing in God? So even if you demand from people to provide an evidence, they sometimes think that they already have done that. So it helps to actually go through looking at their arguments and coming up with a very simple and basic way of showing to the person that is arguing with you that why that can't be considered evidence. And it helps to do that in a simple way, in a non-offensive way, in a way that you feel like you're respecting the other person's position, if that person is not being a dick. But yeah, I mean, I'm not saying that you always have to be polite. If somebody's not being polite to you, feel free to be a dick back to them. For sure. But I'm just saying, if you wanna be polite, if you wanna be non-offensive, this book also tries to come up with a way to explain these things in a way that somebody doesn't feel like they're being attacked
or ridiculed, perhaps.
Because
I find it very difficult to argue against theists without ridiculing them. Very difficult. Yeah,
I mean, ridicule I think it takes all kinds of approaches. Some people say that, well, we shouldn't ridicule people. Some people say, we should ridicule them. It's the most effective way. I think we shouldn't limit ourselves. I mean, ridiculing religion was very helpful for me when I decided that I'm an atheist. Like that is something that when people ridiculed verses in the Quran, that was so shocking to me that made me want to check it out and see what they were saying. So I don't think there is a right way. I see a lot of atheists saying like, "Oh, this is not the right way. You're not a true atheist. This is the right way. This is how you should approach it." There is no right way.
I can't believe people actually have that attitude.
Yeah, actually, it's so common. There's so many people out there that say like atheists should do this, should do that. I'm like, where does it say that? Where does it say atheists should? Like,
there must be a rule book that nobody knows about.
Yeah, where is this written? And sometimes I hear some people say like, "Oh, you're making atheists look bad." I'm sorry, I didn't know I was responsible for all atheists and how they look.
Yeah.
Every atheist is representing themselves or their group or community. No, we don't have a central authority that we have to be responsible to. And, I feel like some atheists are a little bit too religious about their atheism. They wanna come up with a set of standards and codes for how to be an atheist, how to be a true atheist. I don't know what that even means, but I hear it a lot.
It's a no true Scotsman kind of
fallacy
maneuver.
Yeah.
So yeah, I guess you kind of touched on it here. You're an ex-Muslim.
Yes, I am.
From what country?
From Iran.
Okay.
But I'm actually in Canada right now, or else I wouldn't be so outspoken.
Exactly.
I actually can't go back to Iran anymore because I would be hanged maybe if I go back.
Do you still have family there?
Yeah, I do actually, and this was a huge problem when my mother got cancer, and she was dying, and I couldn't go see her. And she, even though all her doctors told her that she shouldn't be traveling, she said she didn't want to die without seeing me, so she decided to come to Canada and die here.
Wow.
She died last January, and it was really tough because I really wanted to go there because she was not supposed to travel, but we knew that she didn't have any time left, and she really wanted to see me before she goes, so she came here.
So are they supportive of your atheism, or how do they feel about this?
Well, my parents used to be I don't think that's how they would describe themselves, but because they had no idea what they were, but based on what I knew, what they believed in, I would describe them as secular deists when I was a child. Mm-hmm. But later on, all my family became atheists after me talking to them and discussing. They were very interested in what I had to say. So they were, right now, both of my brothers are atheists. But my mother was an atheist as well. And actually, they were very surprisingly supportive of Atheist Republic.
That's really cool.
It was very unusual because I used to have a proper job, and I quit to focus on Atheist Republic. And surprisingly, both my parents were very supportive of this.
My family is very, very Christian, and they don't know about this podcast. And that's somewhat by design. Really? Yeah, because my mom would phone me crying if she heard it, and so far she hasn't. So, yeah. So they might stumble across it someday, but I'm not going to put it in their faces. Yeah,
the thing is that I used to be less paranoid about this because I thought like even though in Iran, I thought like these people, even though they wouldn't like people speaking about Islam and God like this, I think they didn't have enough manpower or resources to basically be checking every one of us. But then I saw some guy just recently actually is now being executed in Iran just for a Facebook post,
right?
A blog, yeah. And I'm like, yeah, this is actually pretty serious. You
never know who's gonna turn you in, kind of thing, or say something.
Yeah.
I don't know. I used to think that they care more about people that are opposing the government politically rather than people that are saying anything religious-wise. But recently, I've seen too many examples of people getting into serious trouble, which makes no sense. It seems like right now the Iranian government is in a situation that would really want to show that their human rights record is clean because there's so much attention on the country.
Right.
But the thing is, the problem with the government is that there's so many different elements within the government that are in disagreement with each other. So you can never treat the whole government as this one entity that makes their behavior very unpredictable.
And they're all at least somewhat Muslim, so being against atheists is probably something they can all agree on to some extent.
No, I would think so. There are some moderates even within the government that would be okay with free speech, but and wishing that Iran had more free speech rights. But their voices are not that powerful back there in Iran.
Right.
I mean, there are Muslims out there. Even though these people are not very loud, but there are Muslims out there that are very open to the idea of free speech and letting people even criticize Islam and even criticize Prophet Muhammad. But these people can't be that outspoken because of a fear of a backlash from their own community.
Right.
Yeah.
Very much a minority report kind of situation.
Right, yeah.
And a somewhat endangered minority.
Yeah.
So something I thought... go ahead.
Yeah. No, go ahead.
I just was, I was explaining to Mike about the chapter about your past out of your book and how you found the loophole in the Quran or wherever that said if you died before a certain age, you could go to heaven automatically. Well,
that's not specifically mentioned in the Quran. That's something that was, so Islam is, when the laws of Islam, where it came from, is actually most of it doesn't come from the Quran. Most of it actually comes from the Hadith.
Right.
And the Hadith is the Hadith sources could vary from Sunnis and Shias, and their interpretation of the Hadith and the Quran also varies from Shia and Sunni and even different groups within these groups. So I don't know if how close this is to what Sunnis believe, but what we were told in our school is that before the age when you mature, and that age for boys is 15 and for girls is 9, according to what we were told, there's no such thing as sin. So whatever you do, if you die before then, you're basically pure and you will go to heaven. It's unlike Christianity. Christianity believes that from birth you have this original sin.
Yeah, that's right.
But Islam believes that sin starts after the age of responsibility, which I guess makes a little bit more sense.
It does. Yeah.
Yeah. So basically, to me, that seemed like when I thought about it, it was like this seems like an obvious decision. They're telling me that if I die after age 15, I could either go to hell or heaven, and if I die before 15, the only place I could end up in is heaven. Of course, suicide is an unforgivable sin that is going to make you go into hell, but that's not true for somebody that's aged before 15. So for a boy before age 15, suicide is not a sin. So I was like, well, why would I gamble? Seems like the biggest and most unreasonable gamble in the universe. Why would I take the chance between eternal torture and eternal pleasure? And I was actually kind of confused of why other people have not considered this. This seems like an obvious decision. And I said, like, well, I'm going to basically quit early.
That seems extremely rational. Extremely rational.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, given the belief, right?
Yeah. That makes a lot of sense. I mean, if you actually believe, then of course you want to go to heaven.
Yeah, and to me, it seems like a lot of these people actually are not taking these teachings seriously. Like, even as a kid, I saw, like, people, most people in Iran, they don't pray. They don't go to mosque. They drink alcohol. They have sex before marriage. Like, the religious come, and you ask them, do you believe in the Quran? They're like, yeah. Are you a Muslim? Yeah. Do you believe in God? Like, why are you doing these things? They're like, oh, I don't think God really cares about these minor issues. Like, well, have you read his book? He really does.
Like, you missed a part there.
I know. I had a Muslim staying with myself and my husband for a few months. He had come here on a visit visa, basically from Tunisia, which is, a fairly moderate Muslim country. But he had these funny ideas. Like, he liked to drink, but he wouldn't drink on Fridays. Or if he was going to drink, he would only drink one day and then get completely smashed, because it was like, okay, I'm going to give up my gold star on that day. But all the other days I'm going to try and be good and get my gold star. And if I get enough gold stars, then I'll be okay. And I kind of teased him about his little gold star scheme for how to get, to binge drink, basically. Instead of having a couple beers every so often, it was this binge drinking gold star program. And actually, I think he kind of gave up on that later on.
Actually, the Quran actually mentions these people that repent and then do it again and repent. And he's like, God is not going to take them seriously when they repent.
Yeah.
He's like, these people, God considers these people as unbelievers.
Yeah.
So I actually heard some people say, like, they're going to do whatever they want, and on their deathbed, they're going to just repent. And that's going to go. God actually the Quran is actually more clever than that. It actually points out, if you do that, that's not going to count. So, and they all these loopholes that you think it's out there, the Quran actually covers all of that. The Quran says that these things don't, I don't know.
We are given one life, full of billions of small and large decisions, to be somebody, to change, to be kind, to give hope, to become a better person, and to leave a lasting impact on this planet. It is a decision to be made every single day while your heart is still beating. We've made our decision. Absence of Clothing, atheist and science-based apparel and merchandise, donating 50% of our profits to charity. Look good and feel good, without God. Check us out at absenceofclothing.com and find us on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, and Pinterest for discount codes and other sweet swag.
Use the code BRAINSTORM at absenceofclothing.com and get 10% off.
If you like the Brainstorm podcast and want to get more of it, you can go to patreon.com/Brainstorm podcast for bonus material, early ad-free episodes, and a shout-out in the next episode. Special Brainstorm gear bonuses for different Patreon levels are available. You can get your own Brainstorm shirts, mugs, and lots more from cafepress.ca/Brainstorm podcast gear. Thanks for your support.
That's for sure a Christian thing. Like, lots of Christians.
Yeah, lots of Christians think that way too.
I don't think the Old Testament or the New Testament are that clever.
No.
I think both Jews and Christians don't have that. I think Jews don't go to hell or anything, right?
They don't have, have either, really.
Yeah. But Christians can certainly, ask for forgiveness on their deathbed.
Last rites,
Well, that's kind of a Catholic thing, I think.
It's actually
kind of a Catholic.
It's much easier to go to heaven with the Christian in Christianity than in Islam.
Oh yeah, everybody goes to heaven in Christianity.
pretty near.
No, well, I mean, as long as you believe in Jesus and accept him as Lord and your Savior, anything goes. You could do whatever the hell you want and just be like, I'm sorry, I'm a sinner. And then you're good. You're fine. In Islam, it's God keeps on. At first, it's like, the verses that came out earlier, it seemed like just the non-believers and the pagans are going to go to hell, and even Christians and Jews are probably most of them are going to be welcomed in heaven. It seemed, and then it kept on redefining who's a pagan and who's a disbeliever and who are actually true Christians and Jews. And then you see, the group of the people, a lot of the people that consider themselves Muslim, if they read the Quran, they're actually going to be categorized as non-believers and pagans.
Oh, geez,
and if you look at what the Quran describes true Christians, if you believe in the Trinity, you're going to go to hell. So yeah, the Quran, a lot
Catholics.
of people. Yeah, a lot of people try to quote the verses of the Quran that says Christians and Jews are going to go to heaven. So look, Quran is so accepting. It says true Christians don't believe in the Trinity. True Christians accept Muhammad as the messenger of God. And so true Jews.
True Christians that are basically Muslim. I'm not sure if that works.
Because the Islam version of true Christianity and true Jewish religion is basically an old version of Islam, and then Muhammad brought his version and made it complete. Right. So basically, the true Christians of Jesus' time were actually Muslim, and the true Jews of Moses' time are actually Muslim too. Basically, according to Quran, Jesus was a Muslim, Moses was a Muslim, Abraham was a Muslim, and these Christians that are talking about Jesus being the Son of God, these are not really true Christians, and they are going to end up in hell. So basically, the majority of Christians are going to end up. I actually don't know any Christian that doesn't believe Jesus
that would actually
either God or the Son of. Yeah. So, it's not that pluralist as some people make it up to be. And Muhammad at the beginning of his prophethood, he really expected that a lot of Jews are going to join him because he modeled his religion after Judaism, and he believed that's going to make a lot of Jews like him, and because they were waiting for a prophet. And he thought I'm here. And he thought they're going to join his ranks. And he was very excited. So he was very welcoming to the Jews at the beginning.
And he even refused to let everybody have pork, which is, seems like a concession for the Jews.
Yes, exactly. And he made everybody, before he made everybody pray towards the Kaaba, he at first made everybody pray towards Jerusalem. Right. That was basically trying to show that this is this Islam is basically the next part of the Jewish religion. But much to his surprise, which shouldn't have been a surprise if he knew anything about the Jewish religion, the Jews didn't accept him because they were waiting for a prophet from the Jews. The Jews were not waiting for an Arab prophet. They believed that the prophet that is coming was going to be another Jew. And so he was very disappointed. So if you look at the earlier revelations, it's very, very Jewish friendly. And he basically mentions Moses and Abraham so many times, it becomes so repetitive. The amount of time the Quran mentions the Moses story. But at the end of the Quran, when he's in Medina and he's in power, he becomes very, very unfriendly and very hostile towards the Jews. But his problem, you see a lot of anti-Semitism today in the Muslim community.
Right.
But Muhammad's original main problem with the Jews was not their race. Muhammad was not racist. I mean, you could say that about him at least. He was not racist at all. His problem with the Jews was their ideology, not their race. When any Jew became Muslim, he would be very, very happy, and he would talk about the Jew that became a Muslim and show that they talk about it all the time and use him as an example. And when one of his wife was a Jew that turned Muslim, when Aisha was talking bad about her, that she's just like any other Jew, Muhammad defended her because she was actually a Muslim now. So Muhammad's problem with the Jews was based on ideology, not based on race. You could say that about him, yeah.
He wasn't racist.
He wasn't racist. It was many bad. Actually, one thing is, yeah,
but not a racist.
Yeah, there are many bad things about him, but it's important to not. When you talk to Muslims, they try to portray Muhammad as this 100% pure and infallible being. And sometimes when you talk to critics of Islam, they try to portray Muhammad as all evil. And, it's both of them is not true. Like, it's true, Muhammad did so many horrible things. But if you look at his story, you can't start a religion and become so popular if you don't have some charming characteristics about you, right? He did care about the poor a lot. That was his original message. He was very pro-equality. He did try to be, even though his treatment of women compared to today's standard is very backward, compared to those times, it was much better than what the Meccans were doing at the time. So it was a progress. But to consider his version of equality something that we could accept today, that doesn't make sense. But it is true that he revolutionized a lot. Even though he was very brutal in his battles, he was more fair than other warlords. Compared to the people around him. But still, that doesn't mean that his standards could be accepted today. It's still very backwards.
Yeah. More fair than then doesn't mean good enough for us now.
Yeah. Just like you wouldn't hold up Joshua as an example for how everyone's supposed to behave now.
Yeah.
From the Bible.
Yeah, or anybody from
the Bible. Or most of the main characters, or David.
Yeah.
Or, yeah.
And, actually, another thing that I wanted to talk about is one thing that we try to do at Atheist Republic, and it's important that I think, and I encourage people with platforms such as yours and other people with podcasts and blogs and social media accounts, is to bring other ex-Muslims, even within the country, within the Middle East or Indonesia or other, or India or Bangladesh or other countries, to come on your show, because I feel like now that we live in a global community now, and everything is connected, and I feel like the atheist activist movements needs to have a more global perspective rather than focusing on local issues. And that's one thing we try to do at Atheist Republic. Our team is very international. We have people in our team that are from all around the world, and they all are working hard on building our community. And anybody that has a platform, these people, a lot of times atheists say that, we want to help atheists in the Middle East and in Indonesia and in Pakistan, but we don't know what to do. We don't understand. Our background is Christianity, and we understand local issues better. So that's what we want to focus on. But
we also don't want to endanger them.
Well, the thing is that a lot of these people are looking for a platform, right?
Yeah,
and they need somebody like you guys or other people to provide them with somehow to speak. And if these people would love this platform, and a lot of times you could just, if they want, you could just not share their names, right?
Mm-hmm.
And for people, if it doesn't, we don't have to completely understand what is going on there for us to make a difference. We could just let them explain why, by bringing them on these platforms and letting them lending our audience. Like, we have a huge audience at Atheist Republic, and we try to and we're going to try to do that more now, to provide our audience to people that have something to say. We've been doing that before with our blogs. We're going to try to do that in other ways soon with our YouTube channel and
you
podcast
guys,
and other things.
Yeah, you're starting a podcast too, right? With the Atheist Republic?
Well, yeah. Well, we're starting a podcast, but our podcast is not going to be like a show. It's just going to be people recording their voices on our website. And right now, there's a location on our website where people can just go and they could record their. If they go to the atheistrepublic.com, they see it at the top menu where it says podcast. When they click on it, they could just leave a voicemail.
Yeah,
and
our
podcast is just going to be basically messages that people leave us, and this could be from anywhere around the world, from Philippines, from Pakistan, from India, from anywhere, from the United States. And basically, we thought that goes back to what we tried to do at Atheist Republic, because the Atheist Republic is meant to be a republic, so it needs to be the voice of its members and its community. So I thought that would be best represent the podcast would best represent what the Atheist Republic is about.
It seemed like a great idea when I saw it on the website there.
Oh, thanks. Well, I'll let you know how it works.
There's another guy. Daniel Dennett has actually started he's got the Freedom from Religion Foundation. I'm not sure if it's a part of that, but they've started an organization that allows preachers, that allows anyone like who's religious to come out of the closet as an atheist, but in private. So they have this. Do you know what I'm talking about? You probably do.
Isn't is that Daniel Dennett, or was that?
Yeah, that's Daniel Dennett. And some of his friends, they can come out of the closet, but only to each other. So they have some privacy, and they can talk about their atheist tendencies without upsetting their lives or risking their families or anything like that.
Yeah, you're talking about the clergy project.
Clergy project. I was going to say cleric project.
Thank you.
But I knew that wasn't right.
I thought. Let me double check, because I thought that was from somebody else.
Well, I remember Dennett in one of his talks talking about that.
Oh, yeah. Maybe.
Yep, he may not have been an originator, but he might be just a promoter of it.
No, you're right. It is Daniel Dennett.
Okay.
Interesting. Okay. Yeah, that's a great project. And I wish we had something like that for imams.
Mm-hmm.
Right, eh?
Yeah.
Well, I guess they could join the clergy project. It might be a bit of a strange fit, but there's already people from all sorts of different types of Christianity, so maybe they could just join the clergy project. Well,
the thing is that if they want to do a Muslim version of that, they don't have to focus on imams. They have to focus on all ex-Muslims, because the thing is with Christianity, it's mostly the clergy that are afraid of a backlash, because other people, when they're Christians and they're like, oh, I'm not a Christian anymore, there's not that much of there is for a lot of people, but not as much as it is for Muslims.
It's not physically dangerous, particularly.
Depending on the community, it's more of a shaming and
there's
dirty looks than anything else.
There can be a big social impact, for sure, and a big family impact.
So I think if they want to do a Muslim version of it, the demand for it must be enough for it not to be specific to just imams, to anybody that is out there that needs to basically talk to other people that are atheists.
But then it might get way too big to be manageable. Where you can for that to be private, you have to actually be able to check on the identity of people. You can't just have someone come in and say, "I don't believe in Muhammad anymore. Let me in your club so I can talk to all these ex-Muslims." Well, I can see that going badly rather fast. So.
Yeah, you're right.
I feel bad, but I seem to recall there is some group that is of ex-Muslims, even in Canada, I think it is. Damn, I feel bad that I can't remember what it is.
It's called the Ex-Muslims of North America. It's a really, really good group. Actually.
Okay, there we go. That's
So
there's a thing. Anyway.
I'm glad you remember all of the names of the foundations that we're forgetting. that's really quite helpful.
No, it's.
I guess you're kind of full time into this stuff, and we're just part timers.
Yeah.
No, the reason why I remember them is because Atheist Republic makes a lot of memes, and we try to quote people that are making a difference, but they are not that famous, because we think like their work is very important, and then sometimes we feel like they need a little bit more recognition and more encouragement to continue what they're doing. So we're always like, there's a lot of like Richard Dawkins memes and Christopher Hitchens memes already out there, but we also try to find those people that are making a great difference and are not being recognized as much. So that's why the reason why I remember the Ex-Muslims of North America is because I was in the process of finding quotes from the leaders of their community and try to quote them in our upcoming memes. Yeah.
No, that's really cool.
The memes that we make on Atheist Republic and posted on our page has grown a lot. We have more than 1 million fans from around the world now.
That's fantastic.
And the reason why that's very helpful is because a lot of people don't like them because they feel like it's too short and it's too simplistic to be able to capture an idea. But whenever they say that, I tell them to look at the comment section whenever one of these memes are posted. Yeah. These memes start a lot of discussions, and it's not just a quote that is in the picture. Each one of these memes could be basically a conversation starter. And it also encourages people a lot of times to share their views, because so many times people, when they see these memes, they feel like sharing them on their own timeline, and they wouldn't have shared it, posted themselves because they maybe didn't find the right words. All of a sudden they see a meme, they're like, this captures what I'm thinking in such a beautiful way. I'm going to share that. So it encourages a lot more people to basically share their views and ideas on their own platform.
I think that people who don't like memes in that sense, because they're too short or whatever, are missing the point, right? Like, it's supposed to make a quick, pithy kind of point that grab somebody's attention, and
like a t-shirt.
Yeah, like a t-shirt, or like it's just supposed to be there and you can read it and relate to it, and then, like you say, it sparks a conversation that can get deeper after the fact.
Yeah, yep. And Christians use this all the time. That's why they print all the kinds of t-shirts on, because they're trying to evangelize by t-shirt.
Right.
And
yeah.
So they've had this figured out. There's good marketing to be had in short, to the point, quick messages with some good visuals. That's
Absolutely.
marketing. That's commercials.
What would Jesus do?
Yeah.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah.
I couldn't think of any new songs for this week. I know I already used a couple Tombstone to Dead Man songs over the last couple episodes, so I wanted to use something a little more rock or metal this week. If you have any music suggestions for future episodes, then email them to me at corey@brainstormblog.net. This episode's song is, I just heard it on the radio the other day, and actually the lyrics seemed really cool. It's Kingdom of Zod by Billy Talent.
We'll never drink your medicine, and we'll never think your way. Masters of broken promises are born to manipulate. Your mind is a vault of prejudice, but we see through the door. Your dirty little secrets aren't so secret anymore. We'll never drink your medicine, and we'll never think your way. You're tied to an ideology from a book that's out of date. No room for your daft intolerance left in this day and age. We're not gonna go down quietly, we're not gonna be afraid. Cause under the cloak of sanity's a madman in disguise. Are we blind, blind, blind? I believe it but I don't understand. I feel it coming like a back of the head. It's a lie, a lie, a lie. If I think you'd be the one to commit, of democracy on those who are not the same. We're casting the stones at liberty, but no one takes the blame. Your cup is full of promise, but there's nothing left in mine. Tell me why? I believe it, but I don't understand. I feel it coming like a back of the head. It's a lie, a lie, a lie. If I think you'd be the one to commit, it'll tell us all apart in the end. It's a lie, a lie, a lie. We never make it like a thief in the night. When we cover up the evidence of their crimes, are we blind? Blind, blind. When they tell me to surrender the fight, I surrender the fight, I surrender the fight. It's a lie, lie, lie. All that I need to survive is what I follow my eyes. And I need to be tied to the edging of night. All that I need to survive is what I follow my eyes. I believe it, but I don't understand. I feel it coming like a back of the head. It's a lie, a lie, a lie. If I think you'd be the one to commit, it'll tell us all apart in the end. It's a lie, a lie, a lie. We never make it like a thief in the night. When we cover up the evidence of their crimes, are we blind? Blind, blind. When they tell me to surrender the fight, I surrender the fight, I surrender the fight. It's a lie, 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 a big fucking lie.
Which it doesn't make sense when they do it, because they like sometimes for some of them they always accuse us of cherry picking, and every time you mention a verse that seems a bit negative, they say like, well, why are you not mentioning the context of that? And then you show them the context and you show that it doesn't really make it any better. And then one thing I usually ask them is like, well, do you demand context when I say love your neighbor? Like, you never hear them demanding context when it comes to positive verses. Like, why is it that whenever you hear a positive verse, you never say, you just accept it like, oh, that's true. Like you never say like, wait a minute, that might actually not be that positive. Where's the context on this, you know? So you're being very selective on when you are demanding context. It's interesting. Actually, it's funny because whenever people demand context and then put it into context, it actually becomes much worse.
That's right. I want to turn what you just said into a meme and put your picture on there. If I can do that, I might have to do that. If I put it into
context, it would be even worse.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, and that usually holds true for stuff in the Bible. It's not like, the context is, if I said blah, 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 I would be a dick. Like, that would be a context where if you snip the blah, 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 blah bit out of it, that would be misleading. But those are not the sort of things that you find in the Bible. So...
And whenever you demand context, they always run away. I never see them stick around for the context part. Like I was like, hey, here's the context, and then usually they're just not there enough. They're just there for mentioning that you took it out of context, but they don't stick around enough for them explaining the right context. And sometimes when I ask the context, like, okay, you tell me that took this out of context. What is the context? Like, I don't know. I have to go check. I'm like, well, how do you know I took it out of context? You don't even know the context. And just because you don't agree with it doesn't mean that I took it out of context. So every verse that you don't agree with basically was taken out of context. That's how you're deciding if something is taken out of context. Right. Even without you knowing the context. A lot of Muslims that tell me online that they don't know I'm an ex-Muslim, they tell me like, oh yeah, you shouldn't talk about something you don't know. You were never a Muslim. You haven't read the Quran, and you shouldn't talk about something you don't know about. And they're like, oh, actually, I was a Muslim most of my life, and I have read the Quran a couple of times, and I actually studied Islam for 12 years. And then I'm like, well, now that you know about, now you're saying you know what this verse is about, tell me what this verse is about. And, you know, it actually turns out they have never actually even read the verse before. Most of the people that, I mean, that's true with Christians and Muslims. Yeah. Most Muslims have never read the Quran. Most Christians have never read the Bible. And they accuse you of not understanding their religion when they even haven't taken the time to study their religion. I mean, if you that think that understanding your religion could be the difference between heaven and hell, you haven't taken the time to read the book that the creator of the goddamn universe wrote word by word for you to read, and you have not read it. Like any Muslim that is reading any book other than the Quran, I'm like, why are you reading some other book? The creator of the universe wrote this book. I don't understand. I really don't understand it. Like, if I tell you, like, I don't know, tell me a celebrity or a politician or somebody that you really admire. If I told you that this guy is on the phone right now, he wants to talk to you specifically, would you take it? And they'd probably say, most of them say yes. I'm like, okay, now God is telling you, the creator of time and space is telling you that you could talk to him anytime that you want. And he wrote this book to you specifically for you to read. And you're just like not doing that. Like, I don't understand that. I really don't understand that. Yeah. And sometimes, when these fundamentalist Muslims, when they talk about Muslim liberals and moderates, I really agree with the fundamentalists a lot. They say, like, oh, these liberals, they have no idea what they're talking about. And I'm like, yeah, they're right. These conservatives are like, oh, the liberals are always like, oh, no, that's, like, they accuse us of saying, like, no, that's not what Islam is about. This is, you don't understand what jihad means. You don't understand what God was saying when he said, beat your wife if they don't listen to you. And then the conservatives always try to point out, like, no, this is actually what it actually means. Look at the context. Look at the hadith that came right with that Quran verse around the same time. And Muhammad actually clarifies that verse in another hadith here. And you're like, yeah, look at these conservatives. They actually have a good point. They actually have taken the time to study what you haven't bothered to study. So it's just,
Yep. And that was my problem with liberal Christianity, because I basically came from fundamentalist Christianity. So I'd been brought up to, understand that they basically were very much picking and choosing their parts of the religion. They were rejecting great portions of it as being antiquated nonsense, and really not treating it as though it was God's word. So you can't, I couldn't go from being a fundamentalist to being a happy clappy liberal Christian, really, coming from that kind of perspective, because I just saw that, they were going to half measures. They were just picking the parts out that they liked, but it made no sense. It had no structural integrity as this liberal construct.
Disingenuous.
Yeah,
dishonest.
In a sense, we as atheists have more in common with the liberals of the religions, but in another sense, like, because our quest is for truth, we also have less in common with them because they're picking and choosing more about what truth they believe.
Yeah.
And actually, to pick and choose is harder to do when it comes to Islam for two reasons. Because first of all, the Quran, unlike the Bible, is supposed to be the direct word of God. The Bible, some Christians believe that it was inspired by God, it was written by man. Some people say Old Testament applies, some people say it doesn't apply. Mm-hmm. Some people say, like, Jesus didn't really mean it here, he was being metaphorical. But the Quran is word by word, not the words of Muhammad, words of God, the uncreated word of God. So And also the Quran itself specifically points out to cherry pickers. It mentions people that accept some parts of the Quran and don't accept some other parts of the Quran, which is very incredible for the Quran to do that. It actually predicted people are going to do that. And it says specifically that these people that do that are going to end up in hell forever. The people, right? So to cherry pick it, yeah, so it doesn't leave it. You know, the Quran does a very good job at leaving no room for being anything other than a fundamentalist if you want to really take the book seriously.
Which is part of its success and part of it, well, the reason why it has, it is so fundamentalist and it's so hard for the reformists to get some traction.
Yeah. It actually even covers its contradictions. Like in the Bible, you could point to contradictions, but in the Quran, you can't point to contradictions because the Quran also predicted that. The Quran has a verse that says, if you ever find basically says that if you ever find a contradiction, the verses that come later apply. So basically, by saying that, it makes it have no contradiction. And it actually makes fun of people that point to contradictions. And he says, like, I'm God. You think I can't change my rules? Like, obviously, we could when we want to make we want to change our rules. We can change our rules. Like, what do you think? If we can create the universe, we can change the rules as well. And actually, that's very important because most of the more pluralist verses in the Quran, the verses that are more accepting of other religions, come earlier in the Quran, and the verses that seem a little bit more hostile to other religions and people of and non-Muslims are in the later verses. And people that point out to earlier verses that have to take into account that the later verses are actually trump those verses, so those verses don't apply anymore.
This sounds like what the Quran actually does. Then is support the more violent and fundamentalist Muslims, like the people who, for example, shot, what was his name, Charlie
Hebdo?
Yeah.
Well, it was a whole bunch of reporters at our magazine.
Charlie Hebdo was a magazine.
Right.
But
yeah, the Quran actually specifically demands to fight anybody that mocks the Prophet.
Yeah.
Specifically demands that. So, the thing is that we have to be careful not to be talking. We have to be clear that we're talking about Islam. We're not talking about Muslims.
Yeah.
We're not in any shape or form at pointing, saying, or claiming that most Muslims are violent. Most Muslims respect human life. Most Muslims are liberal. Most Muslims are kind and welcoming people. And that is because they're not following Islam. Most Muslims do not follow Islam.
Because some part of them recognizes it as just too harsh, going too far, and being, too inapplicable to regular life. So, and in much the same way that fundamentalists, that a lot of Christians will, they'll take their portions of it on Sunday and then carry on through the rest of the week. And some people could, they'll sit there and complain about these Sunday Christians who, carry on as though they weren't really Christian the rest of the week. But a lot of the time, that's a good thing.
Yeah, that's exactly right.
A lot of the time, they're actually better for leaving their Christianity to Sunday mornings.
Yeah, but most of these liberal Muslims believe that they are actually the true Muslims. But it's really hard for them to argue that if they actually read the Quran. I'm not suggesting that if they actually read the Quran cover to cover that they're going to turn into jihadists. I don't think that's going to happen.
I don't think so either.
I think they're just going to use some gymnastic arguments on why this verse that is saying that hit your wife actually is symbolic for something else. I don't know. I've seen some
hit your wife,
or that situation should never actually come up in real life. So,
or what's the saying with the Bible is like if you want to create an atheist, just have them read the Bible, and maybe it's the same way.
Well, I've seen so many interesting ways of people getting around that, but I'm not suggesting. But I have also seen a lot of Muslims that haven't read the Quran or the Hadith when they actually being exposed to these, to actually being honest with themselves and all of a sudden doubting everything. I actually have seen that a lot. So it is worth it to bring these verses out and point them out to people. Some people think that this is only helps the West understand what Islam truly is. No, it's not just for that. It actually helps a lot of Muslims really understand what the Quran says, and it has led to a lot of Muslims that question their faith, and that's actually what started me to question my faith. These questionable verses. So that's actually one thing we need to be clear about is that the main victims of Islam are not the West. The main victims of Islam are Muslims.
Clearly.
When Westerners become victims of Islam, it gets a lot of media attention. So a lot of people they think when you are criticizing or attacking Islam is for the sake of Americans or Europeans or Canadians. But the thing is that many more people are, like the number of people that are dying from terrorism or Islamic jihadist related stuff in the West is very small. Even though it gets a lot of attention compared to other ways of dying, it's very, very insignificant, even though it gets a lot of coverage. Like look at when ISIS beheads an American, it becomes headline news.
Yeah.
But people fail to mention that Saudi Arabia beheads around 50 people every year for crimes like witchcraft, insulting the Prophet, political issues, and nobody gives a shit about that because they're Arabs. Who cares, right? Nobody talks about that.
Just a quick break to talk about our sponsor, Audible.com. Audible.com is offering listeners of Brainstorm a free audiobook download and a free 30-day trial membership. Membership gives you reduced prices on over 150,000 titles for your iPhone, Android, Kindle, or MP3 player, and costs $14.95 per month after the first free month. The book by our guest, Armin Navabi, is on there, and I seriously listened to it like 3 times. It's short and really good. It's called Why There Is No God, Simple Responses to 20 Common Arguments for the Existence of God. For your 30-day free membership and free audiobook download, go to audibletrial.com/brainstorm. That's audibletrial.com/brainstorm. I'd also like to tell you about reasonistproducts.com. T-shirts and hoodies with science, reason, and atheist themes. They've got good prices and offer a buy one get one free deal with the coupon code BRAINSTORM. For a limited time, they're also offering a free t-shirt to Brainstorm listeners. Be the first person to tweet the word Brainstorm to them at Reasonist Products with no vowels in the word products. That's at Reasonist, PRDCTS, reasonistproducts.com.
And then it's very ironic because when you criticize Islam, you're accused of racism and bigotry, but then the thing is that it makes more sense to me to say that if you are not criticizing Islam, you're being a little bit of a bigot, because a lot of the liberals in the West, they argue that they have their own moral standards and we have our own moral standards, and that's their way of life and this is our way of life. It seems like they're suggesting that the people there are not mature enough to have freedom of speech and freedom of expression and not being killed for changing your views. You feel like if you have, and when people in the West, they are anti-gay or anti-woman, we like liberals point to them and they're like, oh my God, look at this homophobic or this misogynist. But when we say like, oh look, Islam is doing the same thing, you're like, oh my God, you're racist or you're a bigot. They're like, wait, why did your standard just change?
Yeah.
You are this is the same thing. They're doing that much, much more over there. Yeah. So the same standard that you have for the Christians here in the United States, we're saying the exact same thing about the Muslims there, but all of a sudden we're not supposed to criticize them because they're different.
Yeah, and they are regressive conservatives in much the same in a similar vein to the way that the regressive conservatives in North America are. And yeah, you have to be willing to criticize regressive conservatism wherever it arises.
Yeah, exactly. And to argue that they are different, that is I think that's bigotry, right? Not and to argue that these are like, it's kind of like saying like, yo, these are children, they don't understand, let them just live. The people that do want us to start criticizing Islam are people there that live there. People that atheists and ex-Muslims and minority Christian people that are there, they're looking at us arguing if we should criticize them or not, and they're shocked of how could we ignore them like this and abandon them when we are so offended by the smallest violations of equality in the West, but we just watch them do whatever they want over there, and the international community just tries to be so respectful of Islam and Islamic belief that just abandons all its standard when it comes to equality. When all of a sudden, when it comes to people living over there, so yeah, so I think
you sound like you're dead on there. That's
yeah. I think the best way to challenge that mindset is to have Arab atheists and Pakistani atheists
absolutely
come and join us and to criticize Islam, because it's really harder for people to accuse those people of bigotry when they are from there. Mm-hmm. And it's really hard for people to accuse those people of not understanding what they're talking about when they're living it. Yep. When they don't know what's going to happen to them. And it's really amazing to me how brave some of these people are. I see these people are like blogging about Islam, and they're like, "Yeah, I could get killed," and I'm something like, well, then why are you doing this? And they're like, why are you blogging about Islam, when you could get killed? They're like, well, if I don't do it, who's going to do it? And these people need more, these people are heroes. Why are we not talking about these people like heroes? We're just so, sometimes I have seen some liberals go as low as calling these people that are risking their life to criticize Islam as becoming too westernized. And they're like, oh, you're being too influenced by white conservatives, white bigots in the West. That's why you're talking about this. And these people are living the life there and could be killed, and they're being accused of being whitewashed or something. It's amazing. It's amazing that people could say that. They just, I also think like the liberals they've seen a lot of conservatives that are actually anti-immigration and are actually foreigner. Get on the anti-Islam bandwagon to push their agenda. Yep. And that's why a lot of these liberals kind of see anything associated with criticizing as Islam as somehow a conservative movement.
They see it as xenophobia. And it really doesn't have to be. It can be xenophobic criticism of Islam, but usually when that's happening, it's Christians doing the criticism, and they're like, well, my crazy God stories are totally fine, but your crazy God stories are terrible and bad. So therefore, we have to get all you people out of our country. Whereas, and some of the time, the atheists that are commenting are a tad bit xenophobic. But
yes, they are.
There are times when you do see that. But I've had lots of people comment to me, well, oh, you're critical of Christians, but you're never critical of Muslims or Jews. And well, it doesn't come up quite as often, but yes, I am. And I'm quite capable of being critical of any of those. Actually, and I can talk about them.
That's very interesting, because on Atheist Republic Facebook, when we post about Christianity, like a meme about Christianity. And then people are like, oh, why are you singling out Christianity? Why are you not talking about Islam? And then you post another post right above that about Islam. And people are like, under like, oh, why are you singling out Islam? Why are you not talking about Christianity? And like, it's right below this meme. It's like, if you come on our page, if you bother to come on our page, you see that we're targeting both of them as much. And like,
we target bad beliefs.
We can't discuss every goddamn problem in a single post. It's crazy. And actually, I want to point out what you just said about how some atheists and some other people are actually anti-Muslim, not actually anti-Islam. And I think it's very, very important for us to call those people out, because these people are taking advantage of our solid arguments against Islam, and they're trying to like join us and then use our movement, and then and we shouldn't let them join our movement, and we shouldn't let them take advantage of the arguments that we're making. We need to call them out and say that these people don't belong. When people are actually when they're criticizing Muslims as people rather than they're criticizing their ideology, we need to be very, very clear that we are not part of these people. We're not claiming that, and these people don't represent what we have to say. And I've seen atheists do that as well. I've seen many people do that. And we shouldn't deny that doesn't exist. That does exist. We should be totally honest about it, and we should join. Like, we should be able to join even Muslims, the Muslims that want to fight that kind of bigotry. We should join them in fighting that. We could tell them that we could respectfully criticize your ideology, but when it comes to fighting bigotry, we're completely on board with you guys.
It's interesting that that there's that distinction, right? Because I always feel that I have to clarify. I'm saying that I disagree with this system of beliefs. I disagree with Islam. I disagree with Christianity. But then you got to separate it, and you got to say, well, but I'm not attacking Muslims, and I'm not attacking Christians. I'm not attacking people. Like, you always have to separate that because people always equate the two so readily.
Well, it's all part of the cultural identity, right? People that identify as Christianity, that's a core part of their identity. People that identify as Muslim, that's a core part of their identity. And
so they can't separate the criticism of the ideology.
Yeah, because if you attack the idea, they take it as attacking the person.
Yeah. And that's a huge shame, because that's actually our greatest challenge. And this is not true with any other argument out there. If you're like a Keynesian economist and then somebody argues against Keynesian economy, people don't get offended. People don't feel like their identity has been
some of them
targeted.
Yeah, that's true. Some of them do.
I was just thinking, isn't that how you get accused of being a communist?
But you're right. That's very minor.
You don't get accused of being a racist.
Yeah.
No, that's right.
Or discussing economics. Yeah.
You're right, though. That's very minor.
But like, you can disagree with somebody's religion, but still respect and uphold their right to observe it. And so, like, my
until it harms others.
Until it harms others. But like something like the eating halal. So my daughter has a little friend who's Pakistani, and we made some efforts to make sure that we had some halal compatible food for the birthday party that I was planning for, because the friend was invited. So it turned out she couldn't come that day, but still, I will make an effort to make sure that, to accommodate this child's dietary restrictions, voluntary dietary restrictions. That's fine. And I think, the school that my kids go to, they actually have Christian prayer every morning. And there's 3 Pakistani Muslim kids that sit out every day, and then my 2 kids that sit out every day. And, I don't think it's very good that they are being singled out of class, the 5 of them, because you want to impose this little Christian prayer. But according to Saskatchewan's constitution, when it joined Canada, that was one of the provisions, is if some communities wanted to have school prayer, specifically the Lord's Prayer, that they could maintain it. So they are legally allowed to have it in 2 provinces in Canada.
Saskatchewan and Alberta.
Yeah. So, yeah.
Ugh.
Yeah, being wrong is not a crime. No. If I want to be against somebody, because they're wrong about their religion or about the nature of the universe, it would be kind of the same as being against people that are bad at math or people that are bad at geography.
Hell, like, I'm wrong all the time.
Yeah, so
I can attest to that.
There's nothing wrong with being wrong, right? But there's also nothing wrong with trying to educate people about what they're wrong about, right? That's all you're doing. If I go around and I'm trying to make people more educated about, the politics within their country, right? People are like, what? Nobody will accuse me of, what do you have against people that don't know anything about politics? What do you have against these people? Nobody's going to accuse me of that. So if I go around and, if we believe that Christians should be able to advocate their worldview, Muslims should be able to advocate their worldview, but they should also accept alternative viewpoints. We should. All we're doing is providing an alternative way of looking at things.
There's a free market of ideas, basically, and everything needs to float or sink in the free market of ideas. I'm mixing my metaphors a little bit, but they need to compete in the free market of ideas, and you can't just exclude things like atheism or critical discussion of religions from this free marketplace, because then it's not a free marketplace. It's a very restricted marketplace of ideas.
Mind you, part of the thing with religion is that all of them claim like a monopoly on the truth, quote unquote, the truth, and that's where the problem with debating it is.
Yeah.
And it's hard to argue that with somebody if they read their book and their book says that actually no, if somebody doesn't agree with this, then they deserve to die, right? So if your book says that, it becomes kind of like self-contradictory. We are saying this is a challenge because we're saying everybody should be able to believe whatever they want, right? But the problem is that sometimes these beliefs include beliefs that no, everybody should not be free to believe whatever they want, right?
Yeah.
So when we are being open about all beliefs, we're actually including beliefs that also want to limit all other beliefs. So we have to figure out a way on how to handle that, which is not that easy.
No,
because
it isn't.
Go on.
Oh, sorry. I was just going to say, in some cases, the beliefs themselves actually cause harm. It's something that John Stuart Mill talked about. Sometimes when you try to spread an idea, what you actually do is end up causing a lot of harm. So if the idea you're spreading is absolutely horrible, like you should kill all blasphemers, whatever that idea is, sometimes you do want to suppress that expression. In some cases, some very limited cases, just to maximize happiness, to maximize well-being, you do want to suppress expression.
But I would challenge that claim by saying that these views usually feed on being suppressed. So
that's
sometimes by trying to suppressing them, you're actually doing the exact opposite of what they're trying to do, because victimization and being perceived as being bullied is actually something that really, really helps religion grow.
Like the Christian
I grew up on
complex.
Christianity like that they just thrived on this idea that they were a persecuted minority when really it was so far from the truth.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
They love that.
Yeah. They love that. Muslims love that too. And they actually, when you do that, it actually helps them provide a case to a better case and better support for why more people should join their ranks. And actually, I think that these ideas that are dangerous, by providing a free platform for them to be discussed, you're actually harming them by doing that. Because when the market is open, if you look at it, when you look at Iran or Saudi Arabia, it's a bit harder for these other ideas to grow, even though they are growing. But if you look at, for example, India, where there's so many different religions and so many different views, atheism is growing really, really fast, and atheist activism is growing really fast. It's really hard to take your religion more seriously when you grow in an environment where you see so many other viewpoints out there. When you're born in an environment where your religion is a de facto belief, it's easier to assume that this is the truth. But when you're born in an environment when your parents are saying something and then your friends are saying something else and then your school is saying something else, you might like, maybe I should actually check this out and see which one of them is true. And as soon as you do that, you're more likely to all of a sudden accept none of them rather than just one of them.
That's why Christians in North America are so afraid of secularism, right? Mm-hmm. Because as soon as it's not
secular education, particularly,
it's not the de facto belief system. So. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so you do find a lot of Christians here who are, they need their children to go to Christian schools and Bible colleges and stay in the bubble until, they're basically, until they're adults and so invested that it's so hard to discount everything that they've spent the last 15 years establishing.
Yeah.
Actually, you said about Christians, how they like to be victimized. That's actually a huge part of Christian religion, because the Bible keeps on mentions that, you're going to be oppressed. So for a lot of Christians, the fact that you're being oppressed is part of the sign that you're on the right side.
That's exactly it. That's how they confirm that they're following God's path, because someone will be saying bad things about them and telling them they're wrong. And that somehow is supposed to confirm that they're on the right track. Yeah. And for Muslims, it's a little bit different, because for Sunnis, most Sunnis see like global domination as a sign of you being on the right track. But for many Shias, at least before the Iranian Revolution, and still now to some extent, it was a little bit more like Christianity. The fact that if you were suppressed, you were on the right track. And that goes back deep. That is rooted deep in their history. Because the Shia leaders, their history was always them being suppressed by Sunnis, and they were always defeated. So if their leaders were always defeated, you have to claim that the defeated ones, the people that are being bullied, are the right ones, right? Because their imams were always bullied and their imams were killed. Yeah. But the Sunni leaders were always, like true history, at least during the time that Islam was being defined, which is years after Muhammad died. During those years, Sunni Islam was dominating half of the civilized world, right? So they saw that as a clear sign that they're on the right path. And the Quran actually promises you that, to some extent, that if you're on the right path, you're going to dominate the world. So they saw that as a sign of them being on the right path. So they have, but the thing is, that was a bit difficult for Shias during two different parts of their history. One of them is during the Safavid time when the Shias actually gained power in Iran, and then also after the Iranian Revolution, when the Shias came to power in Iran. You have to come up with arguments. Well, now we're part of the government. How are we going to deal with that? We're in power right now. We used to believe that until the 12th Imam comes back from hiding, there's supposed to be no Islamic leadership. So now that we are trying to argue that we are your leaders, how are we gonna argue for that? And they come up with interesting ways to get around that. But that's but they always do. They always come up with They invent their own loopholes on how to
Oh, medical problems, but I don't know which solution to choose.
Are you sick of miracle cures that give results no better than the placebo? Have countless life solutions left you feeling more meaningless than ever?
I've tried everything, homeopathy, online yoga, even Tibetan frowning, but none of them have made my life make any more sense.
Sounds like you need Skepticism, the new miracle life cure. Unlike alternative solutions, Skepticism tackles the root of all your cognitive misery by changing the way you think. It's so effective, we guarantee that within 7 days you'll actually be questioning every ridiculous notion that comes your way, rather than swallowing them whole like a guilty fatty.
We got the results back from the lab.
But this is the lab, isn't it?
The other lab.
And?
98% diachrominal and randomization over 3 fractals.
Wow, those numbers speak for themselves.
Before I found Skepticism, my life was a gullible shambles. I'd believe anything. But just look at me now. With Skepticism, I'm a less objectionable human being. I'm not even telling my friends they shouldn't vaccinate their children.
Wow, I'm in the universe. And what's more, Skepticism is completely portable. You can take it anywhere. Try it in front of the television.
I've seen more evidence underneath the pie.
Try it with friends.
Hey Simon, what star sign are you again?
Try it going up the stairs. It even works great at parties.
Don't get Charlie to do it. She's got a memory like a goldfish.
Oh, thank you.
Actually, that is an urban myth about goldfish's memories, because apparently...
The best news is that apart from our mandatory realignment package, the ongoing costs of Skepticism are absolutely zero. Just send a cheque for £9,000 and a stamped addressed envelope to Free Post I've Been Conned Again, and we'll send you all you need to get going. Buy now, and we'll even include a free Skepticism phrasebook, including such handy one-liners as "That's bullshit" and "When you say studies have shown, could you please specify which ones?" Order today! Skepticism! You won't believe it until you see the evidence.
We just wanted to say thanks to everyone who listens to us, shares the show, gives us a rating on iTunes or Stitcher, or supports us through Patreon and Gumroad. We don't have a lot of interaction sometimes with our listeners, but what we have had proves that we attract some of the best people around. Smart, kind, and cool. An audience truly worthy of the titles hardcore and woo-free. Thanks for helping us make the world a smarter place.
Even Muhammad did that. Muhammad broke his own rules many times, and every time he needed to break his rule, a verse just magically appeared from God telling you exactly why that's exactly okay.
How convenient.
Some of these verses that came down from Muhammad to do a specific thing were really, really oddly specific, you know? And it seemed like this too convenient, you know? It's like for a Quran that is supposed to be for all humans at all times, to come from a verse for why it's okay for Muhammad to now marry this woman, it seems like okay, this is really, really specific. In
Sounds
fact,
like Joseph Smith with Mormonism.
I've heard that comparison before, actually.
And
I just happen to be able to take multiple wives, like.
You know, one of Muhammad's wives gets surprised at one point about this. Aisha was one of Muhammad's wives, actually his favorite wife. And he, at one point, she gets accused of adultery with another man. And she's like really, really upset about this. She's crying, and Muhammad is upset, and Muhammad doesn't know if this really happened or this didn't happen. He's trying to figure out what to do. He's talking to Abu Bakr, he's talking to Ali about this. And he really loves Aisha, so he really wants her to be innocent. And all of a sudden, this verse comes down that Aisha is innocent. And these people that are claiming this are liars. And Aisha actually says, like, I didn't know, I can't believe that a verse actually came down about, I didn't know I was that important for a verse. Like, she's really surprised, like, really, a verse came down specifically for this? That's awesome. So she actually mentions that.
Wow.
Actually brags about that too. At one point, one of the wives, the wife that is called Zainab, that was married to Muhammad's adopted son. Muhammad wanted to marry her, but he wasn't allowed because she was married to her son technically. But then a verse that came down that how your adopted sons are not actually your sons. So if he divorces her, it would be okay for Muhammad to marry her, right? So Zainab was really at one point bragged about that, how she was married to Muhammad by a verse from God. So she was arguing to other wives how she's so unique because you all were married by you all were married by men to Muhammad, but I was married by God to Muhammad. And then Aisha reminds her that I'm the person that God brought down a verse to mention I was innocent. So, so there was a verse also about me. So I have bragging rights.
If that doesn't stretch a person's credulity, I'm not sure what will.
No kidding. Wow.
Yeah.
Jeez.
That's excellent.
Pretty brutal.
I don't know. Apparently people's bullshit meters were a little off way back then.
Actually, it wasn't, because the Quran mentions skeptics at the time. And if you look at the Quran, the skeptics at the time of Muhammad were actually had pretty good questions. And Muhammad, a lot of people assume that when Muhammad came down, everybody was like, "Oh my God, a prophet of God, let's follow him." But Muhammad keeps on saying, like, if you look at the Quran, he keeps on saying what people said to him. And he was like, where's your proof? Like, where's your angel? Where are you getting these verses from? Like, well, if your God can't do anything, make him show us the angel that you're talking to. Make that mountain turn into gold. Like, how do we know that you're not the people keep asking him, well, how do we know that you're not just a poet? How do we know
this sounds more and more like Mormonism.
and Muhammad, all he kept on saying is like, oh, they're just non-believers. I'm not going to show them a miracle, because even if I showed them a miracle, they wouldn't believe. That's his answer all the time in the Quran. He's like, look at Muhammad doesn't really show any miracles to anybody. His miracle is supposed to be just the Quran, and the miracle about that is that he didn't know how to read and write, and he brought a book. But the thing is that he didn't write the book. He just mentioned the verses and somebody else wrote them. So I don't know how that's even a miracle. But
just dictated a book.
It doesn't sound like a miracle.
Because he wasn't actually literate, was he? He couldn't actually write.
He wasn't, but he didn't have to write the Quran, because he didn't write. He mentions that he didn't write them. He basically told it to Ali, for example, and Ali wrote it for him. So the thing is that a lot of people at that time that didn't know how to read and write, there were poets. There were many poets that didn't know how to read and write. So
you think that if God was going to talk to someone, and being all-powerful, all-knowing, he'd find the one that knew how to write.
No, because that was supposed to be a miracle, that the person that doesn't know how to read and write brought the Quran. That was his miracle. But the thing is, it's a pretty lame miracle, and people the Arabs around him keep on demanding more miracles. And Muhammad's explanation is that, look, when people demanded miracles from Moses, and then he showed them miracles, people still didn't believe him. Like the Pharaoh still didn't believe him that he was from God, right? So if that didn't work, then what's the point of me bringing a miracle? That was his excuse. That was his excuse. I was like, I'm not going to give you a miracle because you're just not going to believe anyways. Which is, I don't know, it's a really lame. People had really good questions. And another problem with Muhammad was he keeps on demanding that people just accept it, right? And accept everything he says just by repeating it. It's like, if you don't, why should you believe? Because if you don't believe, you're going to end up in hell. He keeps on repeating that over and over and over again in the Quran. Like, aren't you afraid of going into hell? And one thing that makes his claims so questionable, and the Arabs at that time actually mentioned this, was that at one point he brings down a verse that he changes later. Then he said, like, that verse was from Satan. And Satan Satan made it seem like it was from God, and it wasn't.
Isn't
from God.
that what Salman Rushdie's whole book premise was about?
It wasn't. He just used that part of the Muhammad story to make a whole, novel.
Yeah.
Yeah, but
hey, there's a fun factoid because they were called the Satanic Verses or something.
Yeah, yeah.
Yes, it's called the Satanic Verses, and the Arabs were like, "Wait a minute! So if you couldn't tell that if you got a message from Satan or God, how are we supposed to believe anything you say? We could all of it be from Satan.
It could all be from.
And you just can't tell. They're just like you. If you couldn't tell, then why should we believe? And actually, Muhammad. What was Muhammad's first reaction the first time he says that he got the verses from the Quran? To commit suicide. Because he said, when I first got the verses, I thought I'm going crazy, so I'm going to try to kill myself.
Should have gone with that one, I guess.
And God kept on saying, hey, no, you're not going crazy. This is actually God. And he kept on saying, how am I really going crazy, or is this really God? And God is like, no, this is real. This is God.
The voice in your head is like, no, really, I'm God. No, really, I'm God.
And then he goes out to people and he mentions the verses, and then when they don't believe him, he's like, how could you not believe this? And then my question is like, wait a minute, you didn't believe these. You are the person that actually heard them, and you didn't believe them. And now you're expecting that people just be like, oh yeah, I totally trust what you're saying just because you're repeating it to them. When the person that actually heard them directly from God didn't believe it at this first time?
Yeah.
Repetition is actually a really big part of persuasion. Mm-hmm. That makes sense.
Yes, yeah.
Yeah.
And the main people that at first joined Muhammad's cause wasn't really because, was mostly because he was just telling people that, the poor people are not being treated right. So a lot of his followers were just poor people. That felt like, okay, finally somebody's talking for us, right? His cult would die out if it wasn't because some people that came from another city called Yathrib at that time, and they heard him, and they knew that in their city there are some Jews that are always told Arabs that one day a prophet is going to come and kill all of you Arabs, right? For us, right? The Jews were telling the Arabs in that city, because in that city, Arabs and Jews were having major problems. And when then some visitors of that city came to here and saw this Muhammad guy talking about these stuff, and they say like, look at his stories. His stories are actually pretty Jewish. And they're like, maybe if we take this guy over there and say like, hey, here's your prophet that you were talking about. Look, he's actually Arab. And maybe that could help us out in some way to basically fight, those Jews. So they basically took Muhammad to Yathrib, and all of a sudden he became such a huge political figure over there. And if they didn't do that, Muhammad's cult would probably be nothing and would die out within a few years. Anyways, I don't want to go on forever about this.
Don't worry.
All right,
seems like we could
for a little break or something.
Yeah, I think we should. We would normally take a break. It's been about an hour and a half. I guess we'll let you go.
Okay.
And I appreciate you coming on the show. And I'll post the interview. Yeah, I'll post the interview on the Atheist Republic. Anything you want to plug?
Yeah, may I mention our website?
Absolutely.
Okay, so if you guys want to volunteer, if you guys are interested in becoming active in the atheist community, we make it very easy at Atheist Republic. Our team is very fun and very engaging. And even if you're involved still with other atheist communities and movements, that would still be great. That would be a great way for us to network with and cooperate with other atheist movements and communities. So if you want to join our team, just come to atheistrepublic.com, and right at the top menu up there, we have a volunteer tab, and you could join our team there, and you could get involved in any way you want. And even if you pick your role there to get involved, that doesn't mean you have to be limited to that specific role. Our team is very flexible. We are from all around the world. We have a lot of fun. We have a lot of discussions, and we come up with very interesting way on how to reach out to more people and educate more people and create a community for people that are already atheists as well. And we have done that very successfully. Our community has grown to more 1,200,000 people, and it's very, very active. And we would love for more help and more people on our team.
Yeah, your Facebook group is very active every day, and the page is very active every day. And
all right, thank you guys for having me.
Thanks for coming.
Thank you.
Yeah, thanks a lot, man.
Yeah,
it's been great.
A lot of fun.
Bye.
We'll never drink your medicine and we'll never think your way. Masters of broken promises are born to manipulate. Your mind is a vault of prejudice, but we see through the door. Your dirty little secrets aren't so secret anymore.
That's it for this episode. Thanks for listening. The links will be posted in the show notes at brainstormblog.net. If you want to keep up to date with the show, come on over and like us on Facebook at facebook.com/brainstormpodcast or follow us on Twitter at brainstormpod. The show was recorded in Roman Empire Studios. To listen to the rest of this recording session, keep an eye on our Patreon feed by becoming a patron for $1 an episode. I'll produce ad-free episodes when we reach 5 patrons, and any new patrons get a shout-out in the next episode, and when we reach 10 patrons, I'll go back to start producing bonus content. If you can't afford to help us out on Patreon, go to iTunes or Stitcher and give us a rating and a review. We still have a free shirt up for grabs for the first person to do a review on Stitcher. I know it's a pain in the ass, but you got to go to the actual website, and it's a pain. But if you want a free shirt, that's where you go to do it. You can go and buy your own Brainstorm gear from cafepress.ca/brainstormpodcast gear. I think I said cafepress.com last episode, but it's cafepress.ca/brainstormpodcast gear, or go to our website and click on the Cafe Press link. If you send us your pictures wearing your Brainstorm gear, I'll post them on the website. I'm going to create a fans of Brainstorm page with people wearing Brainstorm shirts or hats or whatever they happen to have. If you've got any comments, criticisms, praise, or accolades, mail us at mail@brainstormblog.net or go to the website and click the contact tab. We will respond to your email. Okay, so I can't believe I haven't gotten to this week's podcast shout-out sooner. I guess I just thought they're such a huge podcast and so popular that me giving them a shout-out was kind of unnecessary. But since this is how I pretty much show an appreciation to those who inspire me, this week's shout-out goes to Cognitive Dissonance. Pretty much the funniest podcasters around, Tom and Cecil have become a regular part of my schedule. And I actually tend to prioritize them over much more well-done podcasts that have much more information. Still, they're a lot smarter than they let on, and they can inform you and make you laugh at the same time. They've given us a plug on their show, and they helped out with the mental health campaign. Really appreciate all they've done for us, and admire them and their success. I missed out on congratulating them for their 200th episode, but if they're listening to us, which I doubt, then congratulations, guys. I hope you make it to 200 more. I'll throw links to their website, iTunes, and Facebook page into the show notes. That's it for this one, and have a good one.
This is an opinion-based podcast. Each person on the podcast is responsible for their own opinions, and those opinions don't necessarily reflect the views of the rest of the panel, any guests, or anyone associated with the people on the podcast, such as spouses, partners, children, other family members, friends, or employers. No one person speaks for the podcast, with the possible exception of Corey, and he doesn't speak for anyone else on the show. The Brainstorm podcast does not represent the views of our sponsors.
Just wanted to quickly say at the very end here that I apologize for... it seems like all the ads in this episode really broke the flow of the conversation. I I'm trying really hard to make this work with my life, and some of that means I have to cover costs somehow. And right now, everything's kind of up in the air, but I'm doing my best to keep things going. And again, I'm sorry. I feel like the ads always break the flow, but they got to be in there. Thanks.